Well, hello again. Welcome to Chapter 8, Lesson 6 on Writing and Graphing Inequalities. For this lesson, you need to have your book open to page 625 through 628 along with a pencil so you can take notes as we go through the pages. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about what we're going to learn in this lesson. We will be writing an inequality to represent a situation, and we will graph an inequality. So before we get started further into the lesson, I would like for you to look at the real world link and read the six explanations that are, or the 6 situations that are on questions 1 through 6. And I would like for you to circle the numbers that are possible for each situation. Such as if we look at example number 1, it reads, Jessica spent more than $5 at the arcade. What that means is she could not have spent $1, $2, $3, $4, or $5 because of the fact that it says that she spent more than $5. So what that means is she had to have spent at least $6 or more at the arcade. And that's what you're going to be doing for the remainder of the problem. So go ahead and pause the video, and then when you come back, you will see the correct answer circled. So as you can see, we went ahead and circled the ones that would apply for each situation. When you get to question number 7, it asks for us to describe any patterns that we see in exercises 1 through 6. Now, in all of the exercises, the phrasings more than and less than showed up in, I want to say, just about all of the problems they did. And so what I wanted you to notice is that when you see the more than or the less than, it did not include the number that was attached to the situation. So for example, with number 2, let's say, it says less than 6 people. So the way you would write that as an inequality would be less than 6 people, like that. Your circled numbers did not include the number 6 because we were talking about less than the number that's attached there. And the same thing goes with more than. If you look at example 6, where it says there are more than 12 different flavors of taffy, that means there can't be 12 flavors of taffy. It has to be more than the 12, which is why we circled the 13, 14, and 15. So, on the next page, what we're going to do is we're going to be taking a situation and we're going to then be writing it into an inequality. So, for example, you're going to get a phrase, part of a word problem, and we have to turn it into an inequality using the proper inequality symbols. Now, if you recall in the previous lesson, I had told you to learn a table that tells you when to use which symbol. So I've inserted it onto this page. It's a little bit small, but you can still see it. But this is really important that you understand and learn which symbol goes with which word phrasing. So going on to our examples on number 1, it says, you must be over 12 years old to ride the go-karts. Now, in words, it's saying that you, meaning your age, has to be over, which is also the same thing as saying greater than. It's got to be bigger than 12. So the way that we would write this as an inequality, they use the variable a for age. So they said a, your age, has to be greater than 12. And that's all that you would be doing to turn a phrase into an inequality. On example 2, it says, a pony is less than 14 2/10 hands tall. Well, this was pretty easy here. You see the phrasing less than. We're going to use the variable p for pony. The symbol that goes with less than is the less than symbol, which points to the letter p. And then our number, which is 14 2/10. So the phrase p is less than 14 2/10 is the inequality that goes along with number 2. Number 3 reads, you must be at least 16 years old to have a driver's license. So we're going to use the variable a again for your age. So it says you have to be at least 16 years old. Now I'm going to put the 16 here. This is where it gets a little tricky. We talked about in the previous lesson where when you see the phrasing at least, a lot of people want to use the less than symbol. But really think about what this is saying. If it says you have to be at least 16 years old, that means that I definitely can be or have to be 16 years old or any age bigger than 16, which is why my inequality is going to be A is greater than or equal to 16. In order to have a driver's license, you have to be at least 16 years old, which is why we're using the or equal to, and it has to be greater than the 16 as well. So you can be 16, 17, 18, 19, and of course, so on. So that's one of the ones where I had told you guys that it was a tricky one and we just have to commit it to memory. Let's see if you got this. Now you can go ahead and refer to the table that I had inserted on the previous page. You can go back into your book and turn to that in order to get the proper symbols. But remember, the symbols that you're going to use for this are less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to. And which one you use depends on the situation that's stated in A, B, C, and D. Go ahead and pause the video and go and work these guys out, and when you come back, you will see the corrected answers. For example A, we're going to use the variable A because it's talking about age again. It says that you must be older than 13 to play in the basketball league, which means you have to be a number bigger than 13, which is why I wrote A is greater than 13. On B, it says to use one stamp, your domestic letter must weigh under 3 5/10 ounces. I'm going to use the variable L for letter. Now, we've talked about this before in class. When you're using the variable L, you need to use the cursive form of L, because if you just use plain old L, you're going to mistake it for a number 1 eventually. So on this one, going back to our stamp question or our letter question, the letter must weigh under, which means less than 3 5/10 ounces. Example C, you must be over 48 inches tall to ride the roller coaster. So I'm going to use the variable H for height. Now remember, you can use any variable you need here, but I'm going to go ahead and use the variable H for height, and I have to be over 48 inches tall. So my inequality is H is greater than 48. Now understand that if you are 48 inches tall, exactly 48, according to the phrasing, you can't ride that roller coaster because you have to be taller than that. And example D, you must be at least 18 years old to vote. So this is another age question. So I'm going to write the A down, and I'm going to write the 18 again. This is one of those where it's one of those tricky sounding ones because where it says at least. You see the word least, and a lot of people want to use the less than, but let's really think about what this is saying. In order to vote, you know you have to be 18 or any age bigger than 18, which means your age has to be greater than 18 or it could be equal to 18, because this is the symbol that's going to go with the at least phrasing. The next thing we're going to be doing is we're going to be graphing an inequality. Inequalities can be graphed on a number line. Sometimes it's impossible to show all the values that make an inequality true. Because think about this, a number line will go on forever and ever and ever in each direction. So what we end up doing is we end up doing some shading and using certain circles on our graph. Now before we get started with examples 4 and 5, it's important for us to understand what we're going to use on our number lines. I want to draw your attention to this little sticky note that's right here in your book. I also want you to recopy these notes over in the work zone area, and you can do this either right here or right here, but it's important that you copy these down, and this is another thing that has to be committed to memory. So what this is telling us is this. When we are graphing a number on a number line, sometimes we're going to be using an open circle and sometimes we're going to be using a shaded in circle or a closed circle. So going on to this, we're going to go ahead and put an open circle down on this paper. So that's just an open circle. We're going to use an open circle, and next to it, please write open circle. So we're going to use an open circle when we're going to be using the symbols less than or greater than. we're going to use a closed shaded in circle, so you can see the difference now. So we call this a closed circle. We're going to use a closed circle for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. What's happening on a number line, wherever it's shaded, it's telling us that that is a possible solution. So let's think about this. If we're using a less than or equal to symbol, so now I'm back over in this area right here. If we're using a less than or a greater than symbol, we're not saying that the number is or the inequality, the variable is whatever that number is. We're saying it's got to be bigger or less than that. When we use a closed shaded in circle, we're saying that the answer could be equal to whatever that number is, but it could also be less than or greater than. So let's go through some examples so this would make much more sense. On example 4, it says, graph each inequality on a number line. Number 4 reads n is greater than 9. So we're looking at this guy right there. So all you would do is, and I'm going to redraw these number lines, and I would like for you to do the same thing. So over in your work zone area, whether you wherever you have open space, and I'm going to do mine over in the margins over to the right of my paper, but over in your work zone area, what you would simply do if you're having to draw your own number line, go ahead and just draw a line with arrows that at each end, because number lines go forever and ever and ever in each direction. Since we're talking about the number 9, because our expression or our inequality says n is greater than 9, we're going to just put a 9 right there on our number line. And then we're going to give it an open circle, because what that's saying is n can be any number bigger than 9, but not 9. So what we're going to do is we're going to circle an open circle right there at the 9 like I just did. So that's telling us that we're not including 9 in our solutions. But every other number after that is a possible answer. So that's why we are shading everything that comes to the right of it. Looking at example number 5, it says n is less than or equal to 10. So on this one, what you're going to do is you're going to once again draw a number line. Make sure you have arrows that go on each end, because remember, number lines go forever and ever and ever in each direction. Since we're only talking about the number 10, that's really the only number I need to put on my number line. It's unnecessary for you to add all those extra numbers because it just takes a lot more time. Now, what this is telling us is n could actually be the number 10, but n could also be every number less than 10. So because it could actually be the number 10, I'm going to shade in my circle right at the 10, and I'm going to shade in the left side of my graph, because this indicates the less than direction for all the numbers that are less than 10. All right, so let's see how you guys are doing with this one. Go ahead and work on examples E and F. Pause the video, and when you come back, you will see the worked out solution right there on your graphs. So for example E, we had A is less than 15, which is why I used an open circle at my 15 and shaded everything to the left, which was the same direction as my inequality symbol. So if you look right over here, my inequality symbol points to the left, which is why my shading is to the left of my circle. And for letter B, or example B, B is greater than or equal to 7. You can see that I had a closed circle at the 7 and then shaded everything to the right, because what this is saying is the variable B can be the number 7, but also every number bigger than 7. So looking at our last example, number 6, it says, traffic on a residence street can travel at speeds of no more than 25 miles per hour. Write and graph an inequality to describe the possible speeds on the street. So it talks about a residential area, which is an area that you would live in, a street with houses on it. So it says that people cannot travel at speeds no more than 25 miles per hour, which means you can't go faster than that. If you look at the way they shaded in our graph here, you'll see that they have a closed circle at the 25, because it's saying, hey, you can drive no more than 25 miles per hour, which means you can drive 25 miles an hour, but nothing more than, nothing greater than the 25. So they shaded everything to the left. On examples like this, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to read the word problem, and from the word problem, figure out your inequality variable that we're going to be using. In this case, they just use S for speed, but then you're going to have to write on your own what your inequality is going to be. So since the speed cannot be any more than 25 miles an hour, is why we use S is less than or equal to 25. So to finish this out, go ahead and work on the guided practice. I would like for you guys to work on questions 1 through 5, and I would also like for you to do the rate yourself this time. We'll see you guys back tomorrow.